Hello, welcome to Algoma Family Services Community Kitchen at Home Edition. I'm Sherry Beaton. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be preparing roasted butternut squash soup. It's fall and pumpkins and squash are in season. And we know when produce is in season, it's good value nutritionally, and it's at its peak for taste. It's also that time of year where we start to see less daylight and the temperature gets colder, so we really want to start making those comforting soups. So before we get started, please take 20 seconds to wash your hands with soap and water. When we come back, we'll prepare the squash to roast. The first step in preparing the soup is roasting the squash. So, set your oven at 375 degrees Fahrenheit and let it heat while you prepare the squash. Also, either line or grease a baking pan. Next, cut your squash in half lengthwise and scoop out the seeds. That's it, that's all you need to do to prepare. Place the squash cut side down on the baking sheet. Put them in the oven and roast them for anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. You'll know when they're done when you put a fork or a knife in and the squash are soft right all the way through. I'll be using a boxed chicken broth, but you can use a homemade broth or you can use one that you make up from the powdered chicken broth mix. We're also using an onion, an apple. I'm adding some garlic. The recipe doesn't call for that, but I prefer to add it. You can make this recipe your own just by varying the amounts of seasonings and ingredients that you use. We'll also be using some dried thyme. The recipe calls for either dry or fresh. Salt and pepper, some cream, some maple syrup, and some butter. When your squash is cooked, take it out of the oven and carefully flip it over and allow it to cool for a few minutes. Using a spoon, scoop out all the roasted squash flesh into a bowl, being careful not to take any of the skin. If you're making the soup immediately, measure out the amount of cooked squash that you need for the recipe and set it aside. Any extra squash can be refrigerated or frozen and used for another purpose.
Peel, core, and shred your apple, dice your onion, and mince your garlic.
To make the soup, in a large soup pot or Dutch oven, melt the butter over medium heat. Add the diced onion and cook, stirring until the onion has softened and is translucent but not browned. The recipe calls for 1/2 cup of diced onion. I used 1 whole onion. Add the measured roasted squash. Add the chicken broth and the shredded apple. The recipe calls for 1/2 shredded apple. I used the whole apple. Stir those ingredients and combine them well. Add the thyme. Bring everything to a light boil over medium-high heat, stirring occasionally. Then reduce the heat to medium-low and allow the soup to gently simmer uncovered for 20 to 30 minutes to blend the flavors. After the soup has simmered 20 to 30 minutes, puree the soup using an immersion blender or a countertop blender, being very careful as the soup is very hot. Into the pureed soup, add the maple syrup and the heavy cream. Stir those well to combine into the soup and allow it to cook over medium-low heat for a few minutes just to warm through. Now comes the good part. Taste the soup. Correct the seasonings. You'll want to add salt and pepper. Maple syrups vary in intensity. If you don't notice a subtle maple taste in the soup, add a little bit more maple syrup as needed. Thank you for joining me today at Algoma Family Services Community Kitchen at Home Edition. I hope that you try this recipe, and I hope you experiment with some of the ingredients that are abundantly available at this time of year. For example, a pumpkin would make a great substitute and would taste delicious in this soup recipe. So I hope you take the recipe and make it your own using the ingredients that you and your family prefer. It's a great time of year to be making soups. Hope you enjoy it. Enjoy your kitchen. Enjoy cooking. Bye for now.